India's history is replete with mass killings and pogroms. Whether it is the state-sponsored Jammu massacre of 1947 or the brutal state-led Operation Polo of 1948 to annex the princely state of Hyderabad. However, 1971 was the watershed moment in South Asian history when the rogue Indian Republic tasted blood and never looked back. In 1971, India manufactured an insurgency by training and arming over 100,000 Mukti Bahini militants. As chaos engulfed East Pakistan, it launched an invasion with 400,000 troops, overwhelming the isolated Pakistani forces. Outnumbered but defiant, Pakistanis fought against all odds. Yet Pakistan was dismembered. Emboldened by this success, India went on to replicate the strategy of inflicting chaos and breeding terror all across the region. Whether it was initiating and supporting the gruesome LTTE insurgency in Sri Lanka or currently backing terror in Balochistan and the erstwhile tribal areas of Pakistan, India applied the lessons of 1971 everywhere. Despite deep-rooted domestic crises, since 1971, India has prioritized exporting terrorism and engineering chaos across the region at the cost of its own development, the welfare of its poor, and broader regional stability. Ironically, India still portrays itself as a victim of terrorism, and the world buys it. In truth, it has fueled South Asia's instability by sponsoring proxy terror through outfits like Mukti Bahini, LTTE, TTP and BLA. Indian terror has now crossed the confines of South Asia, evident in acts of transnational repression, including the killing of Canadian citizen Hardeep Singh Nijjar and the attempted assassination of US national Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. India has been using and still uses terrorism as an instrument of statecraft. Yes, terrorism has a permanent address, and it is India.
The war on terror has made Hindu terrorism invisible, but the recent wave of terror committed by radicalized Hindus against Muslims and Sikhs in the United Kingdom, California, New Jersey, and Australia should finally serve as a wake-up call.
Do you support the Bangladesh guerrillas? Do you support a separate state in East Pakistan?
I think, and I personally think, that most of the world believes this, so they may not be willing to say it out openly, that Pakistan as it existed can never be the same again.
I'm not looking for war.
I'd had 8 or 9 months to make my preparations. I'd got a superiority of almost 15 to 1. They just had no chance, but they fought very gallantly.
Pakistan authorities have apprehended frogmen trained in India and launched near Chalna and Chittagong ports for sinking ships bringing food grains to East Pakistan. By indulging in sabotage of food ships, India is trying to create conditions of famine for 75 million people of East Pakistan to fulfill its own political objectives.
In 1971, India blatantly interfered in East Pakistan, exploiting political rifts and geographic isolation to orchestrate a violent insurgency. Under the guise of Bengali nationalism, India trained and unleashed terrorists, branding them as freedom fighters to mask its state-sponsored subversion.
Your decision to honor Indian soldiers who laid down their lives in the Liberation War of 1971 has deeply touched the people of India. Every Indian takes pride in the knowledge that Indian soldiers and Veer Mukti Jodha fought together to liberate Bangladesh from the reign of terror.
The Indian Army's Operation Jackpot was a covert plan to train and arm up to 100,000 Mukti Bahini militants on Indian soil. Over 25 training camps were established across different Indian states, including Bihar, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Tripura and West Bengal, where these guerrilla fighters were equipped with weapons, uniforms, rations, and all the essentials to wage mass violence against East Pakistan, especially pro-Pakistan civil populace. Alongside this militarization, India's propaganda machinery fanned ethnic hatred, sowed division and mentally primed East Pakistan for bloody secession, setting the stage for one of South Asia's darkest, blood-soaked betrayals. Before launching its final military invasion, India choreographed a false flag terrorism incident to justify aggression. In January 1971, the hijacking of Indian Airlines Fokker 27 Ganga, allegedly by two Kashmiri separatists, was conveniently used to cut air routes between East and West Pakistan. The passengers and crew were released, and the aircraft was subsequently destroyed by the hijackers. Interestingly, the hijackers went on to say that they didn't know the passengers were not supposed to be let go. Using the staged hijacking of the Indian Airlines Fokker 27 as a pretext, India closed its airspace to Pakistan. This move forced Pakistan to rely solely on vulnerable sea routes to supply its army in East Pakistan, effectively isolating its forces. With the Pakistan army cut off, India launched the bloody phase of proxy war. What followed was a coordinated genocide of non-Bengalis and pro-Pakistani Bengalis in East Pakistan. From civilians to military personnel, no one was spared. Town after town was set ablaze. Civilians were rounded up, some burnt alive, others butchered in cold blood. Widespread rape and the abduction of young women turned the region into a human rights catastrophe.
इंडिया का फौज रेंजर मुक्ति बहनी उसको बोलता था, एक तरफ से आग लगाया, एक तरफ से आदमी को काट रहा। रात को लड़कियों को उठा कर ले जाता था, सुबह ला करके छोड़ देता था। संटा हाट में काट के, मालगाड़ी नहीं होता, रेल गाड़ी, उसके अंदर सबको भरा था।
बाप माँ सबका सामने से पिरेक ठोक बेइज्जती करके भोग से पिरेक ठोक दिया। औरत को नंगा करके ऐसे पिरेक ठोक के बाप माँ है उसका सामने मारता था। बहुत जुल्म, बहुत जुल्म।
इज्जत लोग थे, सीना काट रहे थे। कैंटोनमेंट जो फौज की वहाँ की खवातीन को उठा के सीना काट रहे थे।
Amidst the Indian-sponsored terrorism, Pakistan launched a military operation to confront the Mukti Bahini insurgency. The Indian military launched a full-scale invasion of East Pakistan to protect its trained Mukti Bahini miscreants. According to conservative estimates, the India instigated war claimed up to 1 million lives, most of them pro-Pakistan Bengalis and Biharis who were first suppressed by Mukti Bahini fighters and later crushed by the Indian army. Yet even after engineering and fueling this bloodshed, India shamelessly rebranded itself as a defender of human rights and Bengali self-determination, portraying the Pakistan army as an oppressor, a twisted narrative that flies in the face of India's own record of brutally crushing similar movements within its own borders.
India engineered conditions that triggered a refugee crisis and then used it as a political weapon, portraying itself as a victim and a savior. And these refugee camps soon turned into recruitment grounds for Mukti Bahini militants. Yet in another dimension of this whole design, Indian army operatives and RSS terrorists infiltrated East Pakistan in civilian clothes and took part in massacres, an involvement even acknowledged by Narendra Modi himself. Can you imagine that Indian-backed Mukti Bahini militia, their militants, had set up slaughterhouses to eliminate entire non-Bengali and pro-Pakistan population. Whole colonies were wiped out, none left to testify what was happening there. The scale of carnage was such that the Kanchan River ran red with the blood of the murdered people that had been dumped into it.
Through orchestrated bloodshed and secession in East Pakistan, India engineered a textbook case of cross-border terrorism. It was both the sponsor and the beneficiary. The creation of Bangladesh wasn't just Pakistan's division. It cemented India as South Asia's hegemon, wielding military dominance and puppeteering the new government in Bangladesh. Many leaders trained or sheltered by India. Mukti Bahini was India's first successful geopolitical weapon, while Pakistan not only lost half of its territory, but bore the blame as well. The 1971 war was Indian terrorism's greatest dividend. Proxy insurgency, media deceit, and brute force masked as moral crusade. But within its own borders, India's brutal hypocrisy tells a far darker story. One doesn't have to look far and hard to uncover the tales of Indian hypocrisy. From the snowy valleys of Kashmir to the jungles of Nagaland, from the Naxalite Red Corridor to the heartland of Punjab, India has violently crushed every genuine independence movement since 1947.
जानबूझ के मुसलमान को मारना चाहते हो, जानबूझ के इस देश में मिनॉरिटीज को खत्म करना चाहते हो। आपको लगता है पहले मुस्लिम मारेंगे, फिर सिख मारेंगे, फिर क्रिश्चियन मारेंगे, ये आपकी सोच है।
Yet, while India brutally crushes demands for self-rule and identity within its own borders, it shamelessly glorifies, champions and even actively supports separatist movements like it did by patronizing Mukti Bahini in East Pakistan in 1971, the LTTE in Sri Lanka, and now the BLA in Balochistan. Inside India, those cries for autonomy are tweaked and labeled as sedition, extremism and terrorism. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the world's most militarized region, stands as a brutal testament to India's 7 decades of state terrorism and broken promises of self-determination enshrined in UN resolutions.
Documented how authorities in Indian-administered Kashmir have repeatedly blocked telecommunications networks to muzzle dissent and employed excessive force while dealing with protests, leading to extrajudicial killings and serious injuries.
As Kashmiris' demand for freedom grew, so did the rebellion. From the mass rapes and massacre of 1991 Kunan Poshpora to the killing of Burhan Wani, India responded with extrajudicial killings, mass graves, and forced disappearances, night raids, and widespread rape. A relentless campaign of oppression. Yet, India shamelessly denies the political nature of the conflict, branding it merely external terrorism, hiding its war crimes behind this lie.
Compare India's stance on 1971 Bangladesh and Kashmir's demand for self-determination since 1947. India proudly backed Bengali nationalism, fueling a violent insurgency to break Pakistan apart. But when Kashmiris assert the same right, India condemns us as separatists and terrorists. Now, Kashmiri fighters took up arms only after democratic processes were crushed, specifically after the rigged 1987 elections. And while countless political protesters and peaceful protesters and activists were jailed and labelled threats to national security, this shows a stark contradiction which exposes India's brutal double standards and hypocrisy.
So after 9/11, India found the perfect moment to align its Kashmir policy with the West's anti-terrorism agenda. The global anti-terrorism climate gave India a free pass. A genuine freedom struggle of Kashmir became part of the global jihadi narrative. And by branding Kashmiri militants as Islamic extremists connected to the global terror outfits, India gained something it had long lacked: international legitimacy for its oppression in Kashmir. Yet another benefit of global terrorism that India exploited. And it's not just the international terrorism that India took advantage of. From Nehru to Indira Gandhi to Narendra Modi, the entire domestic political history of India is evidence that in India, terrorism is a tool for political progress.
Inspired by the success of these ruthless tactics, the cold-hearted Indian state wasted no time in intensifying the brutality against Muslims and minorities as enemies within. Accordingly, from the Gujarat pogrom that earned Modi the chilling title of Butcher of Gujarat, through the Samjhauta Express bombings, to the horrific blasts at Makkah Masjid as well as Ajmer Sharif, all these acts of terror reveal the same sinister pattern. Though the victims of Samjhauta Express were overwhelmingly Muslims, and investigations by the NIA, India's premier investigative agency, exposed the involvement of Hindu terror groups, India shamelessly wears the mask of victimhood. It casts itself as the target of Islamic terrorism, both inside its borders and on the global stage.
once you have collected all the evidence that you need, and then you come to a conclusion as to what exactly happened, who was responsible, etc. Unfortunately, in this case, we are facing an embarrassing position. We have to be very honest with ourselves, with the international community.
By 2007, saffron terror had become a transnational threat when a train carrying Pakistani Muslims was bombed. Later, RSS leaders would claim responsibility for this attack. Even more alarming is that these attacks were carried out with the assistance of Indian military personnel. This prompted calls for a national level investigation into the ties between the military and Hindu terrorist organisations. But when Pakistani terrorists attacked the Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai in 2008, these investigations were suddenly dropped, which is why many believe the Mumbai attackers were employed by Hindu nationalists within the Indian intelligence and security agencies to provide cover for their complicity with Hindu terrorist groups. You see, after Mumbai, the Indian media and government became fixated only on Islamic extremism, which has allowed Hindu extremist terrorist groups to continue to operate freely within India and abroad. But in 2013, Home Minister Sushil Kumar Shinde revealed that BJP and RSS were operating training camps to promote Hindu terrorism.
India shamelessly wears the mask of victimhood. It casts itself as the target of Islamic terrorism, both inside its borders and on the global stage. Buoyed by past successes, India expanded the strategy to serve its broader ambitions, staging attacks, pinning blame on Pakistan, and using brinkmanship to extract strategic concessions. The same deceitful playbook continues to this day. This upgraded strategy was first employed in 2001, when on December 13, 2001, 5 armed attackers stormed the Indian Parliament. Just minutes after top leaders had exited, gunfire erupted, killing 9 Indians, mostly security personnel, along with the attackers. Without credible evidence, India hastily blamed Pakistan and launched Operation Parakram, a massive military build-up under the shadow of nuclear weapons. As the world scrambled to prevent catastrophe, India used the crisis to its advantage, as it was intended. In exchange for de-escalation, it secured a strategic alliance with the US, eventually clinching the 2007 civil nuclear deal, a move that dangerously disrupted the region's nuclear equilibrium and placed India among the de facto nuclear elite, despite its refusal to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. Similar playbook was employed in 2008, albeit at an even larger scale. 10 heavily armed men of concealed identity attacked Mumbai, killing over 170 people.
Gunfire can be heard from inside the Taj Mahal Hotel. Another sign that the attackers were well armed and well prepared to launch what some here are calling India's 9/11.
The world condemned the attack. Sympathy poured in. Without any investigation or evidence, India blamed it on Pakistan, and Delhi used the attack to frame itself a frontline state against Islamic terror, aligning with US and Israeli counter-terror doctrines.
We will take up strongly with our neighbors that the use of their territory for launching attacks on us will not be tolerated.
Foreign investment surged, intelligence operation deepened, and renewed justification for aggressive policies in Kashmir followed.
No one asked who actually benefited from the Mumbai attack. Pakistan was already fighting wars on multiple fronts at that time, making it its last priority to open another front. So why would Pakistan do it? It's a genuine question. Without any reliable inquiry or any evidence, any proof, this terror attack was used to portray India as a key ally in the global war on terror. And that was the whole purpose behind it.
The Indian state's response went beyond security. It rewired public opinion by justifying brutal crackdowns and widespread human rights abuses. Not only did this shape global narratives, but the ruling party, the BJP, also reaped huge political gains at home, stoking fear against Muslims, branding them as terrorists, and uniting the nation around a manufactured common enemy.
The 26/11 attacks further elevated India's global status. India positioned itself as a frontline state in the war on terror, gaining Western military and diplomatic cover. Under this guise, India intensified brutal repression in Kashmir and advanced the RSS agenda at home, by vilifying Muslims, curbing civil liberties, and consolidating Hindutva rule. So who really benefited from 26/11? And who had the motive to stage it? The real winner of these terror attacks was India itself. After amassing enough global clout and fueling deep-rooted Muslim hatred, India moved to unilaterally and decisively tilt the Kashmir issue in its favor. On February 14, 2019, a suicide bombing in Pulwama killed 40 Indian paramilitary troops. Taking a page from the same old blueprint, India blamed Pakistan within hours without any investigation or evidence.
मैं आतंकी संगठनों को और उनके सरपरस्तों को कहना चाहता हूं, बहुत बड़ी कीमत उनको चुकानी पड़ेगी.
Days later, it launched airstrikes on Balakot, claiming retaliation.
अभी पुलवामा हमला हुआ, हमारे वीरों ने आतंकियों को उनके घर में घुस करके मारा है.
The attack tilted the political landscape decisively in India's favour. A wave of hyper-nationalism swept the country, and just months later, the Modi regime scrapped Article 370 and 35A, erasing Kashmir's special status in what many see as a long orchestrated plan cloaked in the fog of Pulwama. Now, the Pulwama incident handed India the perfect smokescreen. It recast the Kashmiri struggle for rights, particularly the right to self-determination, as Islamist terror, and drowned dissent in patriotic hysteria. By branding local freedom fighters as global jihadists, India secured what it always craved: international legitimacy to wage unrestrained repression in Indian-occupied Kashmir.
The Pulwama attack paved the way for India to cement its colonial grip on Kashmir, as planned. Within months, India revoked the UN-mandated Articles 370 and 35A, drastically changing Kashmir's demographics.
जहां तक जम्मू एंड कश्मीर का सवाल है, हमें कोई भी कानून बनाने के लिए या कोई भी संकल्प लेकर आने के लिए कोई नहीं रोक सकता.
A significant move to take direct control of the state of Kashmir.
Troops, as we understand it, out on the streets.
Panic has gripped many local residents.
While in Jammu, the RSS-led 1947 massacre had already reduced Muslims to a minority, after Pulwama, 400,000 domiciles were hastily issued to outsiders. To repeat this in the Kashmir Valley.
370 और 3500 से अखंड भारत का स्वप्न हम पूरा करना चाहते हैं.
A tactic borrowed straight from the Israeli manual for such brutal activities. With this cover, India claimed a free hand to shatter regional military balance, launching Balakot-style provocations against Pakistan without fear of global backlash. Domestically, false flag operations became political tools. Pulwama wasn't just bloodshed, it was a ladder to power, and Modi climbed it straight into re-election. Across decades, India has mastered the politics of terror, backing Mukti Bahini in 1971, fabricating parliament and Mumbai attacks, and weaponizing Pulwama. Each false flag brought diplomatic clout, military deals, and global legitimacy. Behind every act of bloodshed was a strategic windfall. From dismembering Pakistan to rewriting Kashmir's fate, India declared itself the undisputed hegemon of South Asia. It used Mukti Bahini as a geopolitical tool, secured US nuclear pacts post-2001, and turned 26/11 into a launchpad for militarizing Kashmir and silencing dissent under the Hindutva banner. Pulwama handed Modi a landslide win and a license to redraw borders and demographics. With 400,000 new domiciles in Kashmir and Balakot strikes unchecked, India distorted both ground realities and international perception. The question demands an answer. Who relentlessly reaps the spoils of this unending carnage? Whose rise to power and global legitimacy has been paved by the exploitation of fear and violence? The Pahalgam attack fits the same sinister pattern. It gave India a pretext for state-sponsored terror against Pakistani civilians, while painting itself as a tough economic powerhouse and strategic ally against China. Meanwhile, Pakistan bears the brunt, caught in relentless proxy wars from TTP to BLA, suffering economic losses, internal unrest, and the unfair stigma of being the world's terrorism exporter, while in reality, terror is fueled and sustained by India itself. From a bird's eye view, it all traces back to 1971, when India first realized that sustained conflict could be a tool for dominance. Its reach extended beyond East Pakistan to Sri Lanka's civil war, Nepal, Bhutan and the Maldives. Today, the Indian state sponsors transnational repression against the citizens of the mighty US and allies like Canada, Australia and beyond, all because the world remained indifferent to Indian policy of terrorism as statecraft. The world must wake up before reckless India pushes it into uncontrollable chaos. This is a nuclear-armed state that openly backs terrorism, even with its current Prime Minister Modi vividly admitting India's role in training and supporting Mukti Bahini. Not only Modi, but also India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval openly advocates offensive defense.
One is a defensive offense. That is to defend ourselves. We will go to the place from where the offense is coming.
A policy that employs terrorism, sabotage and subversion as tools of statecraft. Still doubt it? Pakistan has undeniable proof. A serving Indian Navy officer, Kulbhushan Yadav, caught red-handed orchestrating terror operations in Balochistan.
My purpose was to hold meetings with Baloch insurgents and carry out activities with their collaboration. These activities have been of criminal nature, these have been of anti-national, terrorist, leading into the killing of or maiming of Pakistani citizens also.
Since 1971, ignoring Indian crimes has only made the world more dangerous. So as thinking beings, ask yourselves, who has gained from terrorism in South Asia and who has bled for it? Should a state that violates sovereignty, backs terror and kills citizens abroad, like Hardeep Singh Nijjar and targets like Gurbatwant Singh Pannu, be allowed to play the victim card? Don't look away. Ask these questions now to India and to the world leaders who have allowed its reckless actions before India answers with the next false flag operation.
रोटी खाओ वरना मेरी गोली तो है ही